If YouTube sent me an email requiring me to submit my proof of vaccination, otherwise they would block me from uploading or outright delete my channel, I would not do it. I would say no and then get deleted because I believe mandates are wrong. I believe that if you're someone who says you oppose the mandates, you think they're wrong, but then you go out and actually support them, the system in which they are placed, or to keep your job, you capitulate to the mandates. I do not believe you actually oppose them. I think you just dislike them, and perhaps having a semantic argument here, because there's a lot of people who say, well, you can oppose the mandates, but still be in the system. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I do not agree with that assessment because I believe opposition means more than just passively being like, that's bad. Like, I don't say I oppose cilantro. No, I don't like cilantro. Will I eat it if I have to? If I was like, I am in complete opposition to cilantro in guacamole, and then someone said, well, the guacamole we have has cilantro in it. Well, that's fine. I guess it's not a big deal. I'm kidding, by the way. But here's why I say this. From the New York Daily News, just 10 violations so far under New York City's vaccine mandate for businesses. 10. 10 violations. Do you know what this means? The system has no enforcement capability other than regular people saying, well, I oppose the vaccine mandates, but I have no choice. Because if people actually did oppose it and said, nah, they can't enforce it. Too bad we have a whole bunch of people wanting to make excuses. But Tim, you oppose YouTube censorship and you're on YouTube. Who did we just have on the show a couple weeks ago? Alex Jones? Steve Bannon? Oh, no, but they're censored, banned individuals. But that must mean I don't really oppose censorship. Or it could mean that I'm operating a YouTube channel where we are platforming many people who have been censored and using it as a platform to bring people to timcast.com and other people's websites as we promote all of their shows, including Alex Jones's website. Pay attention. Pay attention to what it means for strategy and nuance. If you say you oppose the vaccine mandate, it's wrong and it's the road to tyranny. But then you announce you're going to be going and soliciting New York City where you are exempt from the mandate. I don't believe you. I don't. I'm sorry. So I tweeted about this and a lot of people are tweeting at me. And I think for the most part, a lot of people are between a rock and a hard place. This is what you say to me. And I don't care about anybody else. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just one guy. When you say, I am opposed to this, it is wrong, it is tyranny, but I'll submit to it because I would like some goods, please. What you're really saying is that you just don't like having to make the exchange. Me, I completely oppose irreversible medical procedures mandated by the state because an individual needs to talk to their doctor about their medical history. But we're not talking about individualism. We're talking about collectivism, the overt, hardcore, authoritarian collectivism. And you have individuals who are unwilling to band together in many respects, or at least they're not willing to band together in the same way the left is. And that's why they lose. Because when it comes down to it, you'll see all these NBA players, you'll see these celebrities, these comedians. They will say it's wrong. We can't do it. But, for me, I'm willing to make that exchange. Okay, I'm not. These aren't identical. Okay, obviously people are like, what about YouTube, Tim? It's not the same issue. Certainly, and I've accepted this, there's some criticism there we need to suss out. Absolutely. There are some things we've had to cave on in terms of censorship to maintain the platform, notably the name of one whistleblower, which strangely isn't even against the rules, but it's a bit different. It is. It's not irreversible. It's not absolute. Imagine if there was a restaurant in New York City, and there are many, and they say, we are staying open and we will not mandate the vaccine. And then the city said, if you do this, we will fine you. Hey, wait a minute. That literally happened. And guess what? Only 10 violations so far. But hold on. There have been activists putting up signs saying we will not enforce this. There has been vocal, outspoken restaurant owners who have put up big banners in their window. No enforcement. So when I say certain things are like, okay, let's say the guy held a specific event where he welcomed in people and called the city and was like very explicit. Well, then he'd be nuking his own business. If he says, I'm going to keep my business operating, I'm going to do my best to say that's a violation of the law and I'm not going to discriminate, and so be it, let them come. Did they? They didn't. When it came to Alex Jones, we got a strike and YouTube took the video down. And so I immediately, as soon as that happened, called Alex and Michael Malice and said, come back now. Can you come back now and do another episode? And they said, we can't do it immediately, but we can be back next week. So a week after, we did another episode. And you know what? I'm going to be 100% straightforward about everything, because one of the responses I get, people say, but Tim, you mentioned that YouTube said it was okay that Alex was on the show. That's right. I said, is it a bannable offense to host people who have been banned? And they said, no. And I said, okay. So we're going to have him on. They gave us a strike for no reason. None. There was no legitimate explanation. They wouldn't tell me what the strike was for or why we got it. We think we know why the strike happened. We don't know for sure. They won't confirm. And when I asked them, can we put up clips? They said, nope. I can't re-upload the episode. You cannot. I said, okay. Then we'll do another episode. And guess what? The episode's up. And then we had Alex Jones on again. We've also had Steve Bannon on several times, and Enrique Tarrio, chairman of the Proud Boys, who's, I believe, currently being sentenced to prison. So if I were in New York and I had a business, I'd be one of those people putting up a sign saying, we will not enforce this. To be fair, I'd leave New York, considering I already did. The point is, this story right here is the hammer hitting the nail on the head with the hammer. If you would please just stand up for your principles, you'd win. But people won't. And I'll tell you this, other people will come out and make excuses for why they had no choice but to lose. Okay. The conversation isn't so simple. It's not. Some people will say, Tim, why don't you stay in New York and fight back? Why don't you stay there and say, I refuse this? Because bombs were planted. Because a black supremacist assassinated 2 cops in front of my house. Now, that is something different. You need to understand, just because some things are similar doesn't mean they're identical. I respect the idea that people should stay and challenge the system and try and make it better. At the same time, I wonder why it is that so many just capitulate to the exchange they claim to oppose. Sorry, that's just me. Everybody has a different line on morality. There's something you need to understand as well. A lot of people bring up, for instance, civil rights, gender segregation, for instance. Well, back in the day, many of the same arguments for racial segregation are applied today for gender segregation. And there's an interesting question about where that line is. On the left, they say there isn't one. If the law says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, there cannot be 2 distinct bathrooms on the basis of sex. And that's an interesting point. It is. Back in the day in the Civil Rights Act, they would argue that the different races were different, therefore they needed different spaces. They're not identical arguments, but they're similar, and they bring up many moral questions. There's a lot of questions in if you take the moral foundations test, about incest. And if we allow marriage, because it's consenting adults in the privacy of their own home, there are a lot of questions there. We have moral lines. For me, it's something simple. Censorship is bad. It's really, really bad, okay? But there's weight to what's happening. Do I oppose censorship? Yes, which is why I'm willing to host Alex Jones 3 times, Steve Bannon twice, and we'd love to have Bannon back. Actually, we'd love to have him back to talk about the Arizona audit, which is something I could use assistance with because it's hard for me to track and understand. We've already had a lot of these conversations with Matt Brainerd, for instance, on the show. Matt Brainerd, of which has said very bold things, which cross YouTube, well, which presumably don't or could, I don't know. The point is, YouTube could ban me at any moment. They say, oh, sure, fine, this person's fine, and they give us an arbitrary strike. I risk getting suspended, for a week, and getting our streaming shut down, which would end our live show for 1 week on that second strike. Or I'm sorry, we got a warning, because you get a warning before a strike. So correction, it was a warning. They took the video down for a community guidelines violation, gave us a warning. 1 more strike meant a 1-week suspension of our show, and I said, I'm going to have mine anyway, because I'm not playing that game. Do I need to say the name of a whistleblower? I really don't. It doesn't do anything. It has no big impact. The story's not in the news cycle. I covered it extensively. So what? Do I need to host people like Steve Bannon? Yes. One of the most influential political personalities right now who's still in the news cycle, and I will. And we tell them, be careful, because we are treading on thin ice. Does that mean I am giving everything up? No. If you were running a business and you were letting people come in opposition to vaccine mandates, I would say you have my respect. If you were running a business and there was a speakeasy operating, I would say, okay, it's not about me saying you should violate the vaccine mandates. One, I do oppose them. It's about me saying, do you truly believe in what you are saying when you oppose them? I will never buy cilantro. I despise it. There is no circumstance in which I will. There's not going to be a moment in which I'm sitting in a store and they're like, well, you know, it's the only vegetable we have. I'd be like, nah, I don't want cilantro. It's not nutritionally dense. It's not going to sustain me. And I think it tastes like garbage. It does not taste like soap. I don't know where that's not me. I just don't like it. So I don't even say I oppose it. I dislike it. You know, like I said, if somebody ordered guacamole and it's in it, okay, fine, I'll eat it. I'm still not going to buy it myself. No, but what I think is, and I can respect this and understand it, those that disagree and argue are between a rock and a hard place. Is a very, very difficult decision to risk your family, your safety, security on what you truly value and believe in. And you may say, I value the safety and security of my family more than my freedom. You are allowed to say that, but just say it. I happen to value freedom more than security because I learned a long time ago that those who would give up even a little bit of security give up a little bit of their freedom for temporary security deserve neither and will lose both. And there's variations on the phrase, but typically giving up your freedom does not result in you being safer, nor for your children. What's really happening, I think, is many people are saying, I don't want to be first in line. Because eventually you will lose these resources. And I'm not here to pander to anybody. I don't care if you tweet at me all day and night saying I'm wrong. If you're right wing or left wing, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. If you give up your freedom, you will lose your security along with it. It's called the Great Reset, they say. There's food supply shortages. How much longer do you think you're going to last trying to live in this overpopulated, crowded, dense city? Crowder. No, Crowder's a good show. I meant crowded. You think you're gonna just be able to exist there forever? Fine. Do whatever you want. But I think many people are just lying to themselves. You're willing to bend the knee to the state who is stripping away your rights one day at a time. You know what's happening. The pattern is only getting worse. Do you think capitulating on your principles will result in them finally stopping now? And I see this story and I'm like, yeah, I know. Just 10 violations. Why? Because the police don't want to enforce it. Because it's almost impossible to enforce. The only people who are enforcing it are the people who run the businesses. And I've said this before. It is the mom and pop shops. It is the stores. That viral video of the man sitting down, the black family, and they're like, show us your vaccines. Ain't no cops there. Ain't no cop forcing this guy to do it. And almost no one is enforcing this. 10 violations. It's laughable considering millions of people live in New York City. But you know what? No one actually wants to stand up. I'm sorry. Many moved. I know we have people who work here who are like, I left. I won't do it. Jack Murphy, for instance, as much as we argued on this stuff about kids and he disagreed with me, still said, I will not hold my event in New York City where there's a vaccine mandate. And I'm like, that's somebody who means it. But most people in the city, without anyone enforcing anything, just gave in. Now, you mean to tell me that with only 10 violations so far, people have no choice? You mean to tell me that with only 10 violations, people truly opposed this? I'm sorry if I don't believe you. There is no evidence to suggest anyone who opposes this is facing any real risk to themselves or anyone else. They just said the threat from the government is easily enough for me to capitulate and give up on my values. You can tell me I'm wrong. Fine. I'm allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to be right. And I'm often wrong. But I'm saying this. I lived in New York. I lived on a street where a black supremacist assassinated 2 cops. Literally, I look out my window and I saw the crime scene. The police told me I couldn't leave my home. I left my home anyway. I tried walking out the door and they stopped me as they were walking back. You can't come outside. It's a crime scene. And I went, okay. And then I went back inside, watched them pass, opened the door and walked right out. But I realized, you know what? I'm not going to live in a place where black supremacists are killing people. I'm not going to live in a place where the cops are trying to block me from leaving my own house. So I jumped the river, went to the Jersey side and said, at least I'm still within the city's distance. And then bombs were planted in Jersey City and in Manhattan. And I said, man, there's no reason to be here. So I moved to the southern New York metro, which is Bayonne, still in Jersey, not Staten Island. On the Jersey side, I'm like, this is better. And it was. There's a good skate park. Skate park's actually pretty rad, small, but it's all right. It's got a good little mini ramp section, like a little half pipe. And then ultimately I was just like, being in the New York Metro, it's still all the same thing. We're still, we didn't go to the city all that often, but still I see the riots, I see the chaos. I want to move away. I was looking at just all of the news and all of the escalation. We went to South Jersey. Then COVID happened. And I said, COVID happened and we were worried, but we were like, whatever, we'll just make sure we've got enough food and things might get bad, but the riots happened. And so then we ended up here. We're in West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia tri-state area. I'll leave. And some people say you shouldn't. They say you should stay and vote and change the system. And that's actually a coin toss for me. It's true. It is. Or should we build like-minded communities that, support each other? In New York, it is, in my opinion, a losing battle when only 10 violations has resulted in millions of people dropping to their knees. Now, I think most of the people in New York support this. 100% they support it. So then there's only a small faction of people who don't. I believe the media is lying about the percentages and the polls. I don't trust them, especially when you see this. Take a look. 3,700 substitute teachers needed ahead of vaccine deadline. Yet people aren't getting it. They don't want the vaccine, and that's resulting in a shortage. I'm hearing tons of anecdotes, people posting messages across the internet saying, my hospital is now short-staffed. We were already facing labor shortages. Well, of course, the vaccine mandates will result in a bit more drop-off. How much? I'm not entirely convinced. 18,000 shots given to New York City school employees ahead of vaccine deadline. The mandate is the first full vaccine requirement for any group of city workers and affects well over 150,000 teachers and staff. Full vaccine mandate, meaning 2 and possibly a booster moving forward. We'll see. 18,000 shots. They say I oppose the mandates. Okay. They say I would never do this. Okay. Then the time comes and they say, I don't want to get fired. I'll just do it. Only 10 violations for businesses, but every business did it. I have always felt this way. I remember being younger, and I've told you this story. I had friends who are servers, and they were like, they only pay us $2 an hour. It's not fair. And I'm like, well, you get tips, but still, if they don't get tips, they're mandated to pay minimum wage. We should get paid more. Have you considered asking your coworkers if they feel the same? Yeah, they all do. Have you considered then saying, because we all feel the same, we can all walk off right now? Oh, no, I can't do that. I'll lose money. Okay. What we're really talking about is a scale of its weight. How much do you value one thing over another? When I say, what I mean by I oppose something, it means that to a great deal I am unwilling to compromise because accepting what I oppose it's a line I can't cross. So when I say I oppose vaccine mandates, if YouTube came to me and said, send us a copy of your proof of vaccination, I'd be like, I'm not going to do it. It won't happen. When people say they oppose the vaccine mandates and then at the last minute just say, oh, okay, fine, I guess I'll do it anyway. What they're really saying is, I understand what they say when they say they don't like the vaccine mandates, but they're not opposing anything. They're not opposing it. They're literally saying, okay, fine, you win. And people don't accept it. And I think the reason they don't is because people don't want to face the harsh consequences of what they claim to truly believe in. The founding fathers of this country did, and they were wealthy. And it's funny when the left says they were wealthy white landowners. Wow. And they were willing to risk all of that. I think it's funny when people are like, easy for you to say, Tim Pool, you're rich. Oh, yeah, easy for me to say when I was 23 and homeless. When I walked away from my apartment because I said, I value freedom. And I gave up the security of my apartment. I was busking. I was playing guitar on the streets for money. And you make decent money. And I said, I'll just do this wherever. I'll do it wherever. Okay, fine, you say. You have no kids, Tim. You're right, I don't. I do have about 30 employees who I hope realize exactly what it means when I say I have a red line, and if we get banned because of it, we'll see how that plays out. Perhaps not the same as having kids. That's a very fair point. Your kids, your blood, everything that matters to you, and you'd give up your life for them. Employees, not the same, but still a responsibility. So I won't act like they're the same as children. That would be ridiculous. But I do have people who rely on me and who would face very serious hardship, potentially not being able to eat, should the line be crossed on YouTube that results in my being banned. But when I say I oppose them, I oppose them. Now let's talk about other mandates. A lot of people have said, what about masks? You wear masks? Oh, I know. I went to Micro Center the other day to buy equipment. I wore a mask. There's a difference between, for 20 minutes, we were in a store wearing a mask, walked out, took it off. It's not permanent. It's not irreversible. And I don't need a doctor to tell me I can wear a mask or not. I got to wear a shirt too. It says no shirt, no shoes, no service. Okay, I get it. I wear a shirt anyway. Do I want to wear the mask? I don't care to. But it's like 10 minutes. That's why I've never thought it was a big deal. Vaccine mandates are very, very different. I want you to imagine like submitting to someone saying, regardless of what your doctor thinks, inject this irreversible treatment. Again, I think the vaccines are fine and safe. And that's where people come in again. They say, Tim, you can oppose the mandates, but not the vaccine. And I'm like, right, I'm not talking about those people. There are people I know who I have on the show who got vaccinated because they wanted to. That I respect. I'm talking about not even the vaccines or the mandates. I'm talking about you and your principles. Do you say, I oppose this? And then go and give into it? I'm like, no, you don't. You just agreed to it. That's not opposition to anything. Okay, you can marginally criticize it, but if you're agreeing to the system and playing by it, I do not see that as active opposition. I see it as criticism or disdain. There are people I'm talking about specifically that come out and they're like, I refuse this, I will not do it, and at the last minute walk in and get the vaccine because they're scared of losing their jobs. What they've said is the exchange of goods between you, the exchange of an irreversible medical procedure that I oppose for goods, resources, money, or comfort or security is a valuable trade. I certainly don't think it is. My body is the only thing I have. I don't drink. This is another thing people don't realize. Like, I don't drink. I maybe will have a sip to taste something perhaps, but I don't drink. I don't smoke. No tattoos. You got one life to live. Treat your body with respect. And, I'll say this. I ate average. I used to eat very average. And I thought about a lot of this stuff and I was like, how I need to look more into it and eating better. And so I've been adding more vegetables and mostly doing keto. Now, keto it's difficult to know what's right and what's wrong. And I don't know if keto is better or worse, but I do know that I've cut out junk food, processed sugars, bread. It's a very paleo diet. And man, I just feel a whole lot better. I feel amazing. So let me just say this. I want you to ask yourself a question. If you opposed the vaccine mandate and then decided you wanted to go to a show so it was worth getting, were you actively opposing the mandate or were you agreeing to it? If you opposed the vaccine mandate and were holding out and said, I don't want to get this, and then your job said, well, you can be fired, do you really oppose it when you say, I value my access to resources more than this position? I think people need to understand like the math I'm trying to point to. There are two doors in front of you. One of them is opposition. One of them is status quo. When I say oppose, I mean you actively say no. If you're faced with two doors, and it's a very difficult position, and your values would lead you to ruin or challenge or hardship, you say, I oppose the mandates, then you accept the consequences of your action. If you say, I would like to go through that door, but that door's just safer, well, then you're not opposing it. You're walking through the door. You're agreeing to it. So look, I only ask for consistency and honesty and self-realization. Just say it. There's nothing wrong with supporting the mandates, even if you don't like them. You can say, I wish it weren't this way, but I actively have entered this system willingly, but they were coercing me. I say this, coercion. That's what people say. When I was living in Chicago and I had this nice apartment with a bunch of roommates, I had to want for nothing. I mean, I wasn't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I had enough to pay rent, to pay the bills, to skate every day. And I was like, I could go on for a long time doing this. And I thought to myself, this is not the way. Sitting here is not growth. It is not progress. It is not good for me. But if I leave and try and find something better, I'll be risking everything. And I looked at those two doors and said, I'm going to walk through the one that could leave me sleeping on a beach, because the risk be damned. I believe something right now. I oppose a sedentary life of sitting here and just coasting by. There needs to be something else. Otherwise, I'll never grow. I'll never change. I'll never improve. And so I found a rideshare, drove some guy's car with a couple other people to California, San Diego, took a bus up to Los Angeles with a backpack and a couple $100 and said, I'll have to figure it out. And fortunately, I didn't have to be sleeping on the streets. I had slept on the streets in Chicago. I had risked homelessness because that was a door I said I am willing to go through. Here's what it is. And this is where I absolutely respect it. When someone says, I am willing to capitulate to the system and undergo an irreversible medical procedure I oppose because it means my children will have food. Well, then you're sacrificing for your kids. And that I understand. And you can say, I oppose them, but I will do this. In the end, while I can certainly understand and respect the ideals behind that, I will tell you this. If you are willing to give up your freedom in exchange for security of anyone else, you will lose both. The libertarians seem to get it. But I think there's a lot of people who are just, I don't know, scared. And I get it. What do you do when you lose your job and they deny you unemployment? It's tough. It is. Life's not easy. And they'll say, it's easy for you, Tim. You're wealthy and you have no kids. And it's like, you need to understand, did I get here because I was risk averse or because I was willing to take any and all risks necessary to find what I was looking for? This is the mistake people make. I get people saying this all the time to me. If I had money, I'd be successful too. I went to Occupy Wall Street with a cell phone I bought for like $200 or $300. I worked at a job. I saved up. I slept on a couch. I bought a cell phone. I went to Occupy Wall Street. I had a backpack with some savings in it and clothes, and I slept outside almost every single night. And I filmed and started live streaming. If you're unwilling to do what's necessary to succeed, if you don't have the time or energy, that's fine. You don't have to. I understand. But you should understand this about my philosophy because I say it all the time and it's not going to change. If you don't want to take the risks, just say, I don't want to take the risks. I prefer the security. I absolutely could have just stayed in Newport News, Virginia, hanging out. I almost bought a skate park back then. Yeah, things were going well. I was like, I'm going to get a skate park. We're going to make it work. I can run this thing. I started filming some skate videos and then I saw Occupy. I said, no, that's amazing. And so I took a risk. And I went up and I had nothing but a phone. You can do whatever you set your mind to. It's just hard, and a lot of people don't want to accept it. They assume that they should just be able to walk out the door, discover it. People think they'll start a YouTube channel and be making hundreds of dollars per day. When I started my YouTube channel, I was getting like $2 or $3 per day. I saved up money working for Disney. Okay, that's the path that led me on. I knew that working for Vice and Disney after going independent was going to allow me to make a salary, which I'd save up, and I saved up almost every single penny. I slept on a couch while I worked at Vice, filming these documentaries. I went to Disney. Now I had an apartment. Hey, I saved almost every penny. And then when I tried to break my contract because I didn't believe in what they were doing. So I didn't produce much for them because I refused to violate my principles. I broke a very lucrative contract. Well, I sought to break a lucrative contract, but they held me to it. So we didn't produce anything for the most part. And then the contract ended and I left. And I used that money to start a YouTube channel. And I thought to myself as I was doing it, I'm like, I'm losing money every single day. And I'm like, I'm pulling savings to pay the rent. I'm pulling savings to pay my bills. I had to get, a root canal. And I'm like, man, am I going to run out of money? What am I going to do? I'm not going to pull my ship off course. And then $2 or $3 a day turned into $5 a day, turned into 10, 20. And then I remember one day I was getting I saw the first $40 from one day. And I was like, this is it. This is it. We're going to pay the rent. I stopped pulling from my savings. It was hard watching my savings dwindle, no retirement. And then I pulled out of the tailspin, reversed course. And then over the past 2-3 years, things have started working out better. You don't have to live like me. You don't have to like me. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe and trust in what I say. And you don't have to respect my opinions. Absolutely not. That's never been what this is about. But I will tell you this. I will not back down. When I see something, I will say it. I will express my opinion, regardless of who is telling me I'm wrong, be it a conservative, a liberal, the IDW, or otherwise. Because I think I'm right. I think I can be wrong. I think I'm wrong often. But in this regard, I say I'm right. And if you think I'm wrong, just comment, tell me. And that's part of the conversation. I believe we're all individuals. I believe we are all made equal before God. We all have the same inherent rights, inalienable. And that means I am not an elite who should be exempt from the rules to flout them. I should not be allowed to go to New York City and fly in a private plane and perform at venues without a vaccine mandate or a mask. Yet that's the rules as they stand now. Why will I not go to New York? I'm exempt. You know this. For one, I can fly in a private plane. No mandates for that. No masks for that. And New York says that you don't need a vaccine if you're a performer. I could go to New York right now and do a big event. I will never do it because I don't believe in it. I would much, much rather lie on my back in an open field in the middle of nowhere staring at clouds, knowing that it's all over. I've lost the fight. My values have been destroyed. And even after only 10 violations, we have watched millions drop to their knees. And I accept it. But I will not give in. We'll see how that goes for me. Next segment will be at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.